You're listening to Dead Air Podcast, part of splatterpictures.net.
What's up, everybody? Wes, Dead Air Knife here with always
typical Lydia.
Today's show, we're going to be doing the 2021 modern day classic, Malignant. My head hurts. I don't have
a malignant sound.
I don't have a sound.
Yeah.
No,
It could have radio static.
It seems like her head hurts a lot.
Well, your head had hurt too. Yeah, this is a future classic. I swear to God, it really is. Unless, of course, James Wan blows it out of the park going forward, because he's still young. He still has a lot of jam in his donut.
No, I like it. He's got a lot of jam left in his donut. You know, when directors get on in years, they go one of two ways. They either get to that point where people are saying, man, they still got it. God, they still fucking got it. And then the other side of it is, what is this guy doing? And there's a lot of people, particularly in horror, who their best work was behind them when they were young and they had ideas, and then they kind of get into career mode where they just got to keep putting something out. And if you're exclusively a horror director, it's got to be horror. James Wan is a different beast altogether because he has become mythic in modern day horror. He is the architect, or at least the puppet master in some cases, of some of the biggest franchises, the most successful films. Obviously, Blumhouse loves him, and at this juncture, if Malignant is any indication, he has his pick of projects. He's done massive blockbusters with things like Aquaman, and I really just think that he is as big time can get, particularly for genre. I don't know how well a lot of those movies in his I know he doesn't make all of them. I know that he has producer credits on them and stuff like that, but I don't know how involved he is with some of the, for example, Conjuring universe type films that aren't really well received, or they're still making fucking Insidious movies, aren't they?
Yeah, and I mean, that's one thing. Chris had asked, have we covered James Wan before? And he brought up Dead Silence, which I still think of one of my favorite shows that we've done, and one of the it wasn't like it was a sleeper hit for me, but I really liked that movie a lot, and there's things about it that stick with me to this day. But did we do Saw? Did we do any of the like Conjurings or Insidious? I don't think we have, but that is like what my only problem. If I have a problem with James Wan, well, I have two problems with James Wan. One is that he's never done his fabled remake of The Entity. I mean, hello, sir, please get going on that. And the other one is that a lot of the movies he's involved with are very samey, those sorts of ones. Saw getting later on in its tenure, I love that series, but I confuse them after Saw 3. I confuse Malignant, obviously. I confuse The Conjuring and the Insidious universes. Granted, it has a lot to do with the Warrens, or Lynn Shay, as much as I love her. And I love her hair. If you go into Chris's YouTube channel, there's some outtakes from playing The Quarry where the wireframe gives up and it's just this head of hair swearing at Ted Raimi. It's really hilarious. But having her in a lot of things confuses me too, because I just think of like, oh, it's that Warrens movie where Lynn Shay makes an appearance. I can't tell you which movie I'm thinking about.
You're not alone in that. And for the record, in case you or anyone else is curious, our James Wan pictures that we have done is The Conjuring 2. That was a fan request. And Dead Silence. That was it for James Wan. Was he involved with Lights Out, because I think he might have gotten a producer credit on that or something. I can't quite remember.
And I'm wondering, are we confusing him in that one with any of the other hot shot horror directors that may have had a producer credit on that, like Eli Roth? I'm thinking, but it very well could be James Wan. I'd have to look that up, because it's interesting that we did a part 2 of something. I really love that, and I vaguely remember covering that movie. I really ought to go back and listen to all of our shows.
I remember we kind of trashed that one. It wasn't like a hit piece, but I think that we kind of got into it with the Warrens in particular, and also with that film's shortcomings. It's lesser than the Conjuring one. That's all I'll say. But I don't quite remember, and I do think that we liked Dead Silence quite a bit.
Yes, I remember that, and I remember wanting The Crooked Man to be a movie all of its own.
They keep threatening that. They keep saying that The Crooked Man is coming, don't you worry.
This one in particular, I'd had to dig into a little James Wan lore, because for years, since it became apparent that he was not remaking The Entity anytime soon, I just stopped paying attention to him. And he started doing other things, right? And it wasn't top of mind. I wasn't checking on what James Wan was up to. And you may know more about this. I don't know. This Malignant Man. There's a comic book hero called Malignant Man who had cancer, and that property has been adapted for the screen, and it is in James Wan's more than capable hands. But that is not this movie. It's a very different movie, but it's still on his fabled TK list. Much like Guillermo del Toro, where it seems that he has this massive list of movies he's been at one point attached to. But this movie, it's not something that I would have been confused about, because I wasn't, like I said, paying attention to James Wan or knew anything about a comic book character called Malignant Man. But this indeed is not Malignant Man. So I'm wondering if there's people out there that haven't watched this because, well, if it's not Malignant Man, I don't want anything to do with it sort of attitude. I looked at the box office number, and it didn't seem like it didn't make back its money. And is that a flop?
Yes, it is. I think that when this film came out, it was top of mind of that year for people to talk about it. One of the things that was in conversation over and over and over again was that people either loved it or they hated it. And it was part of that very divisive discourse. But I think that it was overshadowed by other films that were coming out that year that also people were very divisive on. And it was all in that same time frame as the Halloween remakes, and it was all in that same time frame of the pressures of Hollywood and movies going away and things going direct to streaming and stuff like that. So it was part of a lot of noise. And because of that, I kept hearing about Malignant over and over and over again as a movie that you should be paying attention to. But, and this is not, obviously I'm not going to name names here. A lot of it was coming from people whose tastes in movies I don't really trust. It's people who like a lot of the big horror movies that come out that I just don't really have much patience for, and I find very boring or pretentious. And the only inkling where I was getting the sense, this might be actually pretty interesting, was that people kept saying that James Wan has gone for broke. James Wan has made a movie in which he is combining tons of genre, and you're gonna either love the ending or you're gonna fucking hate it. So that was keeping me interested, because if it was getting, no one could stay consistent about the things that they did or did not like about it. And everyone was doing, at least on my area of the internet, a very good job of not actually saying what this movie was even about.
Yes, and not that I followed it very closely, but at first glance, you can't really tell what it's about. You could read into the word malignant itself and glean something about it. You can watch the trailers and try and guess. But yeah, it hasn't been ruined. It wasn't spoiled for me either. I really like the one sheet, and I think that there's a lot of things that were eye-catching to me about this film that would have been eye-catching to a lot of people that would have went into it. Granted, they all had a year and a half head start on us watching it because it came out streaming exclusively, if I recall, during the pandemic, which a lot of movies did. And a lot of people saw it. Millions of people saw it on its opening weekend, so to speak. I'm surprised it wasn't spoiled during that time, heavily, because they had such a head start. The things that would have been eye-catching to me at the get-go that intrigued me into watching this film would have been what enticed a lot of people. And it's weird that they wouldn't really talk about it much after, because it's the tone of it all, the fact that it does have some high action sequences, that it almost has a feeling of like The Crow, the way that it's shot and the way that the villain is shot. The name of it, the one sheet, James Wan being attached, that it's a husband-wife screenplay, like it was adapted from their screenplay and co-written with them. I really like that too. Like, there's a lot of things about this film that intrigued me, and I'm just surprised that people weren't talking about it more afterward. But I had the same feeling with The Perfection, a really great film that just sort of came out, peaked, and dropped off. No one ever talked about it again.
Do you think that that's because the way that our society is these days, we don't have the attention spans anymore to keep a film in conversation? Because once it comes out, whether in theaters or on streaming, you watch it, you go on Twitter or TikTok or whatever, and then you oh my god, I just saw this movie, or oh my god, I'm watching this for the first time, or blah blah blah. And then once you've done that, tomorrow it's on to the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing.
It's gotta be. And that's part of why I'm really like, I'll always push back against this though, but it's even more rampant now, this binge watching culture of limited series, or series in any way, shape, or form, where people invest hours, if not, like, they could invest 20 hours just to engage in 10 minutes of water cooler conversation on the new thing. And it's disturbing to me. I don't have that kind of fucking time, you know? But with a movie, it's a pretty minimal investment. And I guess that's part of that problem, where people go on to the next new thing and don't have the attention span. And they skip to YouTube, they watch end of Malignant explained, and that's the end of their thought process on it. They don't have conversations about it. And I hate if this is the reason that films and TV, books, movies are all being churned out in such an almost ChatGPT level of quality way, that there isn't any sustenance there for us. There's no substance for us to really gnaw on, talk about. But we're doing that right now.
We are. This is a Lydia pick. Let me ask you this. What was it that made you want to bring this to the show?
I had a lot of fun watching it. And, you know, if there's anything that's lost in a lot of these very serious, elevated horror movies, is fun, right? And it's a newer movie that was fun. It's not ultra gory, but it has its splatter moments, and it's got its surprising effects, which I really enjoy. And that's sort of the essence of this show, right? And also bringing something new to one another. Something new, something old, something borrowed, something blue. This is all James Wan, and he's kind of like a classic horror director now that came into his own as we were already firmly planted within this genre as fans. So we kind of have grown up alongside James Wan. You more so than me, actually. But so I really like having a film of his on the show for once, god damn it, because it's been a while. And from the things that we've picked, we haven't even picked his best. And I'm not saying that this is his best, but this is him coming back. Not that he ever necessarily left horror, but as you pointed out, he's done a lot of other things. So I thought it was really cool to have a James Wan film back on the show. I had a lot of fun watching it, like I said, and I just was taken with the different styles that this movie embodies. And maybe that is what chased away a lot of people. It seems that he has kind of squeezed his head and got it all out, and this is what we get for it. This movie goes in so many directions. I can see why some people really don't like it for that, but I had a lot of fun watching him play on screen, and that's what it felt like. He was just sort of impishly throwing everything into this stew that is Malignant.
I definitely hear what you're saying. When I went into this film, I did it in the classic and best way, which is I knew absolutely nothing. I had not seen a trailer. I'd seen the poster, so I knew what Malignant was. As I'd said, I had heard tell that this was a genre-blending horror film, that people seem to have this attitude that the audacity of James Wan to do this, and then pointing out that when you have James Wan's success, you are afforded the audacity to do something like this. And I'll be honest with you, when I first started watching this film, I didn't understand what anyone was fucking talking about, because even though I'll give the opening credit sequence kudos for coming off as an early 2000s sort of rocky instrumental, almost like a Castle, like those William Castle remakes that they did in the early 2000s. Like, it came off kind of like that, and then we're into James Wan territory. I'm in an impossible house that a young couple lives in that has 18 rooms, an ornate front yard. It looks like it costs like $3 million fucking dollars to live there. And what is she, a nurse or something like that? and dude is something in a flannel shirt. Maybe he's the architect, maybe he's in construction, who the fuck knows. How do they have this house? I don't fucking know. Doesn't matter. And I'm seeing dimly lit rooms that have 87 lights in it, yet can't project light past half a foot, so it's still dark somehow. I'm seeing long dark hallways. I'm seeing flickering lights. I'm seeing a silhouette in shadow. You turn the lights off, all of a sudden it goes. So this is like the James Waniest Wan shit you could fucking put into a movie. And I immediately, the dirge of like, ugh, these peasants. This is just what people think are different, I guess. The same haunted house movie that I've seen 600 times. Oh, good, she's pregnant. I actually had this thought when I was watching it, where I was like, I hope she's not pregnant for this whole fucking movie, because, like, why would Lydia want to watch this?
No, exactly. And I read a few books where there's a girl pregnant through the whole thing. And there was a movie we watched last night that was a little bit of pregnancy to start with. We watched The Tall Man with Jessica Biel, and very strange film. And it's usually a thing that I don't like. And yeah, you're in luck, Wes. She's not going to be pregnant for long.
No,
so,
man.
Yeah, it does start out with a little bit of a thing that normally I do like to warn people against, is that there is a scene of quite brutal domestic violence at the beginning, which I really dislike. And it helps because it's like takes this Blumhousian beginning of this James Wanian Wan movie that is the most James Wan movie ever, very much so. And it just sort of reminds you of this very gritty reality, and it introduces a very hateable character right away in a very brutal scene. And I like, it's not as brutal as something like The Bad Lieutenant nun scene by any means at all. It's not like that. It's a swift kick, so to speak, in the reality. And I found it very effective, and it sort of was like, oh, he's all grown up now. Look at him showing domestic violence in all its horrible glory. What did you think of these two characters? And of course, as we meet them, because everything kind of changes quite quickly.
So I honestly had the thought where I hope this is not the status quo. I was kind of waiting for this sequence to end and wondering what again, I was looking for why, because this is a Lydia pick. And when you recommend a film to me, I guess like, oh, I've known you for so long, I can probably guess what it's going to be. But every so often, you recommend films for the show where I'm in the mode of like trying to figure out exactly when this becomes a movie that you'll tolerate or like enough to bring to the show that's worthy of discussion. And I was not seeing it like in this opening scene. I was just like, I don't understand why this counts, because if we're going to do a movie like this for the show, I just feel like you would have picked a different haunting movie, because that's what it comes off as. I don't want anyone to think like, oh, Wes is, I'm not shitting on it. I'm just saying in through the context of you recommending it to me, because I don't mind films like this. Really, I like to kid them because they're all so samey, but fuck it, slashers from the 80s are all the same. So it just totally comes down to what your tastes are. So that's where I was. That obviously was it Derek? Derek's her.
Derek,
her,
yeah. Derek, yeah. The abusive twat.
The abusive fucking guy. You know, you could feel the tension in the scene immediately. I didn't know that it was going to go to domestic violence. I thought what we were coming home to was, you know, dude watching TV. He's got the sports on. He's on his phone. He's sitting in bed. His pregnant wife gets home from work. She's looking for pain medication and she's talking to him. He's completely disengaged, and there's a long pause in between all of his answers where you're just getting the sense that he's responding to her because he feels like he has to, but he doesn't actually want to hear her complain. And then he like completely out of pocket, as the kids say these days, just like, I'm tired of watching my children die inside of you. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it's like, sir, it is fucking 8 o'clock in the morning for me right now. I am not prepared for this.
No, and then if there was a little devil on your shoulder in my guys saying, just you wait, it's going to be a supervillain action horror film any minute now. It just doesn't jive. But yeah, he does a very good job of being this hateful, horrible dude that it begins this like, okay, you won't know what to expect from this person. And it also strikes me as to why is she trying to get pregnant with this loser's anything, because that's just warped, really. And multiple times. She's gone through this multiple times. But she suffers an injury that is sort of what the first domino to fall. We had been treated to this opening sequence of like doctors. It was like 90s sci-fi horror, medical horror kind of bullshit for a minute, where we have like something is loose in the wall, so to speak, and it's this horrible creature that can communicate through the radio, and it's really intense. And a doctor saying, time to cut out the cancer. So we get an idea of like where the title comes. Then we go to this. So we already have been sort of like unsettled. Like we don't know how these things are going to link up, because there's not a lot of spoilers in this. I had no idea where this movie was going either. But then you're lulled into this almost, you're lulled into this like haunted house looking quiet domestic violence, strangers level almost, of men and women, unlikable men and women, not getting along, and then he hits her.
Yeah, he does. And that, like you said, sets off this domino effect. All of a sudden, supernatural stuff starts happening. But before we get into it, Liz, like, what is this fucking movie even about anyways? I want you to try to like give it to us straight, Doc.
This movie is about how when you pull super villain action horror thread, you're bound to come out on the other end in Conjuring Blumhousian territory. There's a backstory behind every single supervillain out there. And I really, 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 really enjoy the backstory of this particular one because it doesn't let up with being gory and weird and gross, even though you look at the poster and you see almost a Hitchcockian thing. You have these moments of very like Sin City looking things. You have these moments that remind me of something like Dark City. There's things that remind me of The Crow. There's sort of like little tiny, it's like a zoetrope, but not made up of one coherent picture. It's a zoetrope made up of pictures that all sort of remind you of a little tiny slice of horror history throughout this whole film. It takes a special person to make that work. So what this is about is just how you can stitch all of those things and smush them all into one tiny, tiny, tiny little box, knowing that like a weird Jack in the Box, it is going to explode out. And I love this feeling. It is like a fun gift. Every scene is something different.
Do you know what I got the sense of when I was watching this film? I was wondering if one day there was James Wan sitting in his living room with his, sweatpants, beer, feet up on the coffee table, watching Basket Case. And he just thought to himself, what if this movie cost $20 million? What would Basket Case look like if it cost $20 million? And then he made Malignant.
And that's one of the things that I'd not heard. Chris had heard that there's some parallels between those films. I hadn't heard that at all. I hadn't heard much about this film. So that was like a delightful sort of thing. You got kind of Quato from the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, kind of
yes,
animatronics going on in here that were entirely unexpected. So yeah, that is sort of part of what he thought.
The craziest thing is that opening sequence when you see like this sort of like praying mantis armed thing behind this medical sheet, this plastic translucent plastic sheet. You're like, what the fuck is that? And then I kept having to remind myself when we were into the haunted house aspect of this film, don't forget that first 5 minutes there was 5 minutes where there was like a screeching like thing in the background, like through the radio. It was like, I'll kill you all. I was like, that's hilarious. I love when something is like hideously evil. And I was like, I'll fucking kill all of you. And then you definitely get the sense of what this thing's character is. But I kept thinking to myself, what happened to that though? What happened to that? I want to go back to that gothic ass fucking castle. It looks like fucking a colored shot of like a Universal Monsters picture, like this castle on a cliff. So I kept reminding myself, there's got to be something more to this. There's got to be fucking something more to this. And sure enough, when we get into it, the police get involved. Derek has his head like completely twisted around and popped almost off. I love the level of violence in this film. There's a part of me that always wants them to push it further, since you're already in such a ridiculous realm in the first place. But the violence I really dug, and they set you up pretty well for it. Initially, you're just wondering if it's some kind of psychic entity, kind of like the entity from Lights Out, or kind of like Kayako or Sadako or something along those lines.
Or having like a Carrie Firestarter sort of feel to it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting in that I could take my camera and try and film this, but having James Wan and his know-how and everyone else's know-how behind it, having Michael Burgess, a cinematographer of the Hunger Games, who really knows how to master light and dark like this, but a flickering light to denote that the evil is coming and the shit is about to go down. That happens quite a few times in this film. Static, electronics turning on, flickering lights. Flickering lights imbue so much dread on screen. I could film a flickering light and it would not do the same thing, but here it is one of the more effective flickering lights I've seen in horror, if we're going to go back through flickering lights in horror movies. But James Wan seems to love a good flickering light. Here it's used to really great effect because we already have an idea of the sort of like magnitude of the evil that we may encounter in this film, in this super gothic beginning. And then we're in this very realistic Blumhausian, old haunted gothic sort of feel in the modern. And then we end up with the police in the hospital with a very, very modern, completely out of a different movie sister. Madison's sister hasn't seen her for years because I guess her and Derek's life of miscarrying babies and beating on one another has been so all encompassing. And she has also been completely alienated from her younger sister, unfortunately. So it's like yet another movie, again, now entirely different lighting. You would almost think it's a different cinematographer, but it's just them like impishly playing with the tone of this film.
The way it's interesting that the cinematographer was the same guy that worked on the Hunger Games movies, because it really draws attention to how big budget this looks. There's some shots in this film that are so impressive in their scope. All of those city establishing shots, I was taken aback. I was like, man, I feel like I'm watching like a neo-noir cop drama type thing where the blues and the reds and the offshoots of like pink lighting, it's really, really interesting. And I can tell you, anytime that I kept thinking in the haunted house part of the film, this isn't really scary and this isn't really interesting. I had a thought almost a minute later but that shot is beautiful. This is a beautifully filmed movie, and James Wan knows how to put images together. Like he is an extremely talented director. Her sister Sydney, I believe her name is, she has this long history of plucky, busybody type sister, where she is, it seems, the throwaway line that Derek kept us apart seems kind of like an easy answer for her not really understanding what is going on in her sister's life, so her sister Madison can explain it to us, the audience, while she's explaining to her sister. But it doesn't gel with me because her sister, this is the type of person that on her lunch break goes to visit her sister in the hospital to sleep in bed with her, to cuddle with her in bed. This is the sister that goes to this scary asylum. This is the sister that, you know, is doing sleuthing and yelling at cops and demanding this, that, and the other thing. I just don't see how Derek could keep her out of her life. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, except for the practical storytelling elements. You need to have those elements. I'm not saying it ruins anything. It's just something that I had noticed when I was watching it.
No, like we're missing an important tidbit. Like there's something that one sister did to the other that caused a rift between them personally. And sure, Derek being an abusive ass was part of it entirely. Or maybe her sister was so focused on miscarrying babies over and over again that she didn't notice she hadn't talked to her sister. But yeah, her sister is up in her grill, as the people used to say. And she, on the other hand, her sister is also a little flaky. She can't keep her eyes off Detective Shaw, and she's flirting with him openly, and him as well. And it's like she almost seems to not care about all of what's going on, except that it brings her closer to this hot detective.
He's very attractive, I'll give him that, in a very clean-cut, sharp dressing detective sort of way. They're not going for like the slovenly detective that's seen everything. They're going for the young detective that's still got a lot of years ahead of him, we would hope. What do you think about the police presence in this film? Because I'll be honest with you, the cops are in it a lot more than I thought they'd be, which in a sense is realistic up to a point.
There's sort of two ways I'd like to see cops approached in fiction, and because I'm not a cop and don't have cops in my family, and I am a big proponent of writing what you know. I often like the, when you film the cops, you cut out their face. They don't have names. They're just cops. They're in the room. They do their thing. They ask the questions, dust for prints or whatever cops do, and then they disappear so that you don't have to really write them in. They're not characters. That's my favorite way cops are in films, just because I don't really know much of how they operate, right? Like on a real basis. Or if it's a movie about a cop, something like Last Shift, which is not a good movie, but something like that, or Let Us Pray, really, really good movie that follows police officers. I really like that because then they're just people. This sort of straddles that line, but so did the Wahlberg. Was it Donnie Wahlberg that was in Dead Silence as the constantly shaving cop?
Yeah.
He was really in it. And Saw really also has this as well, where the movie may not be, well, most of them may not be about the cop. The cops are there, man. The cops are like stink on a diaper. I don't know. I'm full of the fun metaphors today. These cops have a lot of jam in their donuts, and they stick around. I like it because it does the job of like having a journalist. You get your library scenes. You get the feeling like when we were watching the last film where you had pointed out that Sarah Michelle Gellar's character was not a detective. She's not a cop. So she's going off and investigating things. Why? It is not your job. You're not good at it. It's dangerous. So we have this added thing. And that's one thing I do like in horror when cops are involved, because you do have that added thing. Like, why does Loomis carry a gun around all of the time? He's a doctor.
Don't worry. He's got a permit.
Yeah, really, honestly. So it helps here, but it is also sort of offbeat because you have this love interest with Detective Shaw and Sydney, and you're like, is that why they're sticking together through this? I don't. It's just it's a very weirdly written as far as a cop's involvement, but it definitely helps with the investigations that we will need to embark upon.
They have this interesting dynamic of background characters in this film that both provide function as people who can help with investigations. You have 3 generations of Madison's family that are involved in this story. I guess dad died, I don't know, but and so they can Sydney can go to their mother, and they can go to the cops, and the cops have information, but they're also basically doing their own investigation. Meanwhile, while all of this stuff is going on, Madison has just experienced a traumatic event. Her boyfriend, abusive, or husband, abusive or not, has been murdered viciously. She has lost her 3rd child. They weren't able to save her with the injuries that she had sustained. The cops are investigating exactly what happened. And then there is another murder, but not before, Lids. Not before. There is a fucking kidnapping?
Yeah. Did you want this movie to change tone and setting and scene and feeling and everything once again with some people that are not involved with the plain storyline? Of course you did.
I was really struggling to figure out, who is this lady? It doesn't help that a lot of these, like, it's another brunette. It's another brunette white lady. So I was like, Cassandra and I were like, is that her job? I thought she was a nurse. We thought it was Madeline, and which I suppose would make sense the way that they made this woman look. But like, there was a time where I literally said out loud, who is this character? Like, who is this? I don't know who this is supposed to be.
You know what though? You know what this movie is really about anyway? Don't you want to also go to the Seattle Underground tours?
That sounds actually very cool. I was literally like, is this a real thing? Can we do this?
It's a real fucking thing. And yeah, me too. But then I was also like, by this point, and this is where I think you make or break your audience. By this point, I'm like, I'm down. Whatever James Wan wants to throw at me, I'm going to the chef's plate. I'm eating the chef's plate. I don't care what they put on in front of me. I'll eat it. It's delicious. It's a fucking bean with wasabi drizzle and a fucking crusty spider or whatever on the plate. I don't care.
We are switching genres again. We have gone from science fiction horror intro to James Wan Blumhouse haunted house movie. We have gone to Saw. We've got kidnapping, duct tape tied to a wall, all this shit. And now we're deeply entrenched in modern day slasher. And this, let me tell you something. I started getting on board with this film in and around here by the sheer audacity of the theatrics of the killer, where I got my coat, I got my gloves, I got my golden knife that I have forged as my first murder weapon for one of the doctors, the one that said that they were going to cut out the cancer. We know her, we recognize her, so we know who the first stabbing victim is. So we know that this is all connected. We don't know how Madeline and this kidnapped woman is connected, but we know how everyone else is connected. This person, I'm going to go to my default. He looks like he's on Slipknot, but he maybe looks more like Rob Zombie from a distance. And because the coat, right? The coat gives the silhouette of a Rob Zombie. And so here we are, modern day slasher, or almost like, I don't know, like I felt like, I was like, are we watching like The Boy or something? Like just something like that. And for a while, we're going to have a slasher movie, Liz, with a golden knife that says excellence on it.
I know. And if I'd have told you at the beginning that this is a slasher movie with a villain that is straight out of like a Rob Zombie, The Crow always comes to mind looking at this, or some like you got your Chrome Skull. This is a new slasher villain, superhero. And we haven't hit the action sequences necessarily, we sort of do. But we don't get to see much of the villain's face. We see where they are. We sort of see how brutal they can be. We see that they're kind of relentless. They're fairly strong. We see those sorts of things. They have taste. They also lurk in the shadows. So it's all these sort of things that harken to comic book villains or some of our favorite comic book heroes or our anti-villains and anti-heroes or whatever. Like it's just all kind of baked really solidly into one, and we sink our teeth into it really readily. But it doesn't jive, of course, with the last three sort of scene changes that we've endured. Now, do you want to go into full-on investigative library scene? Do you want another change of scenery, tone, and genre again? Would you like that?
Yeah, let's get into police procedurals, please.
It's everything I want every movie to always be, but it's damn impossible. And I'll hold off asking the question seriously is, did he pull it off or not? Because I don't think anyone else ever could. But you had mentioned the doctor. There's more than one doctor. And we need to go to dig up some of these journals, because we need to find out, much like movies that we've talked about recently in The Ring, we need to find out the origin story, because Madison doesn't remember anything about being a young child, but her mother leaves it kind of open to the fact that she was adopted, and they need to find out more about her formative years.
Information is fed to us in this film in a really, I don't want to say clumsy way, but it's, again, in the sense where how could a YouTube video exist saying the ending of Malignant explained when every character is going to hyper over explain what exactly is going on, again demonstrating very little faith in the audience. And if I were to accuse this film of anything, it's telegraphing too much, because even through the genre swaps, I did something that I rarely do in this whole crazy world we call film analysis, is I predicted the ending. And so it evolved over time as the movie was progressing. Now, dear listeners, if this is your first episode of Dead Air, welcome. I don't typically do that type of stuff. I wouldn't say I turn my brain off, but I live very much in the moment of the scene. So I don't try to outwit a movie and think ahead. I allow the scene to unfold to me as characters or the audience is being given information. So what that does consequently is it allows me to remember movies very well, but it also allows me to kind of feel what the characters might be learning as they're unveiling things. So consequently, I don't predict the ends of movies very often. I never really beat the movie. I'm never really trying to. So when I do it, I remember the movies that I predict the endings to quite well. And I had my thought process, a little bit of a spoilery. My initial thought was, somehow this woman who was kidnapped is psychically or was somehow linked enough to the doctor that this psychic character could track that person down. So how is Madison linked to this killer? It's gotta be a brother. And they think that, so that twisted evil thing in the beginning of the movie is her brother. And I, of course, thought that they were, separate entities at the time. I thought maybe they were like literally two separate people. And so she is witnessing these murders because she is psychically linked to her evil brother, essentially. It's like an evil twin thing.
Yeah, because we had left that out, that she's seeing all of these things, like eyes of the killer, eye for an eye, and peeping Tom or whatever.
Right. So while this is going on, and her brother, or not brother, but Gabriel will say, all of this, we are learning all this information by essentially things that Madison knows, things that Madison's adopted mother knows, things that the police are investigating, and things that her sister's investigating. So there's all these different places in which people are piecing together the story. I think that the biggest weakness that this film has, aside from if you like the genre swaps or not, I think they're effective and they work, so it doesn't bother me. The biggest weakness is if you figure out what is going on in less than an hour of the movie's runtime, you got a long time to wait for characters to catch up. A long ass fucking time. And I just kept feeling myself over and over again wanting this next scene to be over. So can we stop trying to, I got it. I know it. You're explaining it too much. You're popping in too many VHS tapes. I never thought I'd say it, but I want you to stop popping in VHS tapes and showing me things that I already know. I don't need to see two different full fucking length videos of Madison talking to someone on her weird phone. One phone, and then I don't need all this. I got it. I got the information. I know what I need to know. But they're insistent on showing you that. I think that this movie needs 20 minutes less. It could have been a 90-minute movie, but it's an hour and 51 minutes. So you really do have to sort of buckle up. Now that sounds like a massive criticism. I suppose it is a criticism, but I don't want anyone to think that it ruined anything for me. I'm just saying I noticed it.
I really like a library scene. I do sort of like flashbacks, and I like origin stories to a certain degree. I'm not a huge fan of long drawn out ones though, and you're right, this really is. I could do with so much more less of videos of young Madison, recollections of young Madison, stories of young Madison. I want the hard cold facts. I want what Sydney's gonna dig up in the creepy asylum, because is that not where we want to go? That's where we want to go. Do we want to be sitting there with her adoptive mother going through old family videos? No, we don't. And the stories of Gabriel, and you're right, sort of, I guess maybe a half hour in, I was like, so how far advanced was this tetranoma when they realized it had developed in her head, because she had a half absorbed twin. And I'm like, and the other mystery to me at that point was, well, how is this a separate entity? Was it a full on conjoined twin? Is that what we're really dealing with here? So I did sit through and endure it, like you had as well, and was quite bored by some of this wool gathering and piecing together, because same sort of thing. The time really flied for me, though, or flew, I guess is the better grammar here. But so it did take away from it, and this is the weaker, saggy middle, so to speak, of this film before we change genres yet again.
The thing that I will say, I did think that the scenes were well done. I don't think that there's any bad actors on this cast. I don't really think that most of the dialogue was pretty strong. I thought it was effective. I believed the scenes that I was watching, and that's really all that you can ask for in films like that. And like I said, they were beautiful. I had a question that I wanted to ask you. Who do you think the second Doctor is on the phone with? Do you think he's on the phone with the third Doctor? Because that's what I think.
That is exactly what I think. That, or is he on the phone with Gabriel? And if you don't know how the story goes, you could even think that, because everyone seems to be weirdly in cahoots, and someone is warning him. So this is a cabal, secret society of doctors that have left the whatever it is. So we have sort of like a V for Vendetta thing, where the people that were involved in something a long, long time ago have all moved on, so to speak, but the person with the grudge hasn't forgotten whatsoever. So this is definitely a group of people that have stayed either loosely or whatever in touch in some way, shape, or form, probably because of whatever horrible thing they did or that had happened to him, because it's really kind of subjective at that point, because we don't really know how evil they are or if they're evil at all.
True. Yes. I was definitely this is when I was getting the basket case vibes, because Blyle in that movie is tracking down the doctors that performed the separation of him and his brother. I think that when we get to this sequence, what I liked so much about it is they really go for broke with some of the brutality, right? Like, they're really showing this dude getting stabbed in the face. They're also demonstrating some of the killer's, Gabriel's, superhuman abilities, beyond the fact that this guy is psychic, which is a superhuman ability in the first place. You also see that he's capable of like movement. You get a real sense that something is off. There's an uncanny valley about his body emotions, and you can see that, why are his arms backwards? Why is he walking so weird? Like, what is exactly going on here? Especially when he like jumps up on the bed and shit like that. Madison sees this all psychically, by the way. There's nothing more, could you imagine anything more disturbing than opening your eyes and just seeing like an old man sleeping next to you?
Some of the motions of Gabriel is exactly why I wanted you to see this film. I thought of you several times while watching this, especially with some of these mood changes and genre swaps that I was just like, wow, I'd love to hear what Wes has to say about the quality of and the ease at which this film just slips into different tones, different lighting schemes, different lens use, different tempo, different editing styles. Like, it's just different scene by scene. And then I saw the herky-jerky, uncanny valley, weird body motions, and I was like, oh wow, this is where Wes will get heebie-jeebies. So this will at least be effective in creeping you out. Was it effective in that way?
I never really felt like any discomfort or fear in this film, but it definitely was keeping my attention. Like, I had like my phone was on the other side of the room. I wasn't even looking up casts. I didn't want to get spoiled on anything, because I really thought that it was important to approach this film without anything poisoning my brain. The only thing I even looked up after I had finished watching the movie was just, what year did this come out again? Okay, 2021, got it. So but it was, I wanted to know more. I wanted to know more about this killer. I wanted to know what was going on, even if I had predicted somewhat what was going on, and things had to get modified because in the last 30 or 40 minutes or so, I was like, okay, I think I actually got it figured out. Definitely before the police precinct sequence, I was like, okay, I think I know exactly what this is. Particularly, it seemed like every other scene, Madison was attending to her grievous head wound, like her head was bleeding always. So that definitely tipped me off to like the situation that was probably going on. But I really liked it. I think that the look of this killer is effective and it's cool, and the audacity of the golden dagger is very effective and fun. Like, and I think that you had said that earlier, right? Just fucking fun. Like, remember when horror movies were allowed to be fun? Remember when it was just, why is he got to wear that trench coat and why does he have that golden knife? Because it's fucking fun. Like, it's just an entertaining trip, and it's fun to see someone get stabbed by something like that. But I definitely can see people going to a James Wan movie to get their fright card, and they see silhouettes and they see a Conjuring movie in the first little bit. I absolutely believe that people checked out the second that it was a guy with a golden knife, and you're like, what? Where's my ghosts?
And then you get your giallo sequences, right?
Yes.
That get ridiculously beautiful. And the sound design changes. Everything changes. So if they're already uncomfortable with the fact that it has changed intrinsically from a ooky spooky little haunting domestic thriller / horror light, so to speak, into something that is for diehard fans of the genre / action, then you start throwing in some very cerebral horror in this as well. Yeah, I see why a lot of people fell off of this. I also see why at this point I was in and sold. And then the kidnapped woman falls out of the ceiling. What?
That is basically about the time where I was like, who is this? Like, who the fuck is this? It's not anybody that we should fucking know. And by the way, this is after we get into this psychic sequence where she's going backwards in her mind, and it gives us a little bit more of a window into what we already know. Now, the police, by the way, are very much convinced that at this point, like, Gabriel is not a real thing. It's really part of her mind, and there's a lot of evidence that's saying this is a delusion. She had come from somewhere. She was adopted. Something traumatic had happened. She created Gabriel to deal with it, and we're watching a horror movie and we've seen things on our own that we know that might not be the case. I was at this point like, okay, so I think Gabriel is real and it's in her head, but I think that it's real, but I think it's psychically this maybe, and by the time I saw the fight between the police officer in the underground area where like he almost gets run over by like a buggy and shit, I was like, okay, they're sharing the same body. I definitely got it figured out by then. But the police are pretty much convinced that she's the killer. Her sister is very insistent that whatever is happening to her is very real. And again, like, you have this sister who was like 100% on Madison's side the entire time, demanding answers from people. So it's a great sister character. But again, it makes me wonder, how did Derek get them in? Like, unless like Madison herself was the one that like on Derek's behalf pushed her sister away. Like, so maybe she like, I don't want you anywhere near me or something like that. But it was it still was hard for me to get on board with that. But forget all that. I already talked about it. I wanted to ask your opinion about when this turns into like a full-blown raid-like action film. Once Sydney finally manages to get to that asylum on the hill, an abandoned asylum, which I genuinely wish that they had spent more time with. Although I think one of the reasons why they didn't is because at that point it should be pretty obvious that Sydney's not in any danger. Like, she looks behind her because she hears a noise at one point, but you as the audience at that point should know that, like, if Madison's not free, then it doesn't really matter. There's nothing in that place that can actually hurt Sydney, so we don't want to spend too much time there. She gathers the last bits of information, and then they're speaking to the detectives, who also know that the person who fell through that ceiling is Madison's biological mother. And so you think to yourself, oh, that's who this is. Because we learned simultaneously that Madison's mother was 15 years old, a victim of assault, and became impregnated by her attacker. And then had a monster, a monstrous child, because it was an affront to God or something vaguely religious they throw in there. This also simultaneously goes to the fact that Madison refers to this thing as the devil. The chink in the armor is the fact that Madison, or Gabriel, calls the police officers while they have Madison in custody, while she's sitting right there. And it's a different voice, and the police officers are recording it and everything like that. But all of this shit is happening at once. And it leads to fucking assault on Precinct 13. And it leads to Madison gets put into a prison cell with, it looks like the extras that would be in a fucking Streets of Rage video game on the Sega Genesis. I was like, what is with these what is with these characters? Everyone looks like they're from 1988. And this starts is this sequence famous? I've never seen this sequence referenced by anybody. I didn't even know that this was even in the movie.
No, and it seems like it's it should be everyone's favorite thing to talk about. I guess their favorite thing to bitch about are all the other scenes. Or maybe they dropped off by this point because they've already been force-fed the story of Gabriel's origin as far as his medical origin and what is going on with Madison and her cranium. That maybe by this point they're just done with it, because now they're like, okay, now we meet the bio mom. We get to hear the story all over again from a different point of view. Mm-hmm. Which they could have sped a lot of that up by just having the bio mom fall out of the ceiling and shed some light on things from her point of view. But I digress. This scene is fun. Again, it was where we get to see Gabriel in his full glory, maybe the second time, because it becomes even more apparent about how much control Gabriel really has. And I just to go back for 1 second, I sort of did worry still for Sydney in the hospital, or explaining away why he could call the cops while she's sitting right there and things like that. Not only given the full explanation that we get shortly in this film, but he's that weird psychic powerful thing, almost like Samara, that can imprint himself or move himself along with electronics somehow. So flickering lights aside, his voice can definitely make a phone call. So it's pretty powerful. Maybe he could have harmed Sydney to some degree at the hospital. His range, we don't really know. As far as being in that body, though, we get it on Front Street, what he's capable of. The turning around of limbs, the walking backward, the reaching straight through people, the sheer power of this fight scene, and it is very reminiscent of The Raid. As far as the dynamics, the choreography of this fight scene, and it is gory and insane.
Very gory, very fun to watch. That's one of those sequences where what I would like to do is just go back and watch just that sequence that leads up into the all of the violence that happens in that short amount of time, because it's beyond the scope of anything that we've seen before, particularly in a Blumhouse movie, a James Wan movie. How many people die in these movies? Let's say 5. Let's say on average 5. Sometimes fucking none. Sometimes nobody dies in the movie except for like maybe a random cop or something like that. I tried to keep count, but it's like 60 people get killed in this fucking sequence. And to the point in which I'm like, no matter what is going on, there's no way that Madison is going to be sitting on the back of an ambulance with a cup of cocoa in her hand and a blanket over her shoulders. Like, I was like, there's too much death here. Way too much death here. And so what do? You can't just be like, oh yeah, I moved to Virginia and I'm just trying to put my life back together now. Like that's like so consequences aside, the sheer scope of this is mind-bending. And I wanted to listeners, I have not seen Aquaman, but I have seen action sequences that people have shown me to try to get me to watch Aquaman. And like you can really, really see that James Wan has taken everything that he has learned from making a superhero action film of that level and put it into these sequences. If you were to go and put these sequences side by side, the scenes and their context are different, but the camera angles themselves are identical. This up and over and in and out. It's like the camera is absolutely everywhere, 360 degrees in this scene, and it's these impossible angles, and you see people jumping and crawling on walls, or Gabriel, I suppose. And meanwhile, especially in the police sequence, I just kept thinking to myself as I was watching, these police officers and criminals and everybody just get absolutely fucking manhandled by this creature. Like, while we're watching somebody, and you're looking at like her head, Madison's face in the back of the head, and I just kept thinking to myself, I can't believe something this ridiculous got made. I can't believe how ridiculous. Listen, is there weird fucking movies out there that like you can't? Wow, who would make this? Yeah, but they cost $5. It's the sheer amount of money behind this movie, and all of these actors and everyone here is serious. They're playing it fucking straight. There is not a single fucking joke in the movie, and you're looking at something so fucking weird. And so I give everyone a massive amount of credit for doing that. I truly, truly do. I think that, like, I think the scene, it's cool to watch, and just for going there. And I think that this is going to become, I think the cult status of this film is going to grow year after year after year after year until when I'm old and gray, I'm going to be reading about think pieces about how great this film was, and people demanding a sequel, and come on, James Wan, one more. And he's going to be like 90 and to be like, do another Malignant.
You could definitely like squeeze another Malignant into the storyline, because I'm sure she's like, what, 28 or 29, somewhere in there by the time that the shit hits the fan. Maybe there was a time where she took a vacation for a week and Gabriel got out, because that's the one thing with this scene. There's a few things about this scene. You can't just go and watch it if you're interested in watching this film, because it has interstitial scenes of the rest of the storyline, and it ruins everything, so to speak. So if you really want to have it like unfurled, or if you're about to turn this podcast off because you don't want the whole thing spoiled for you or whatever, you know, you couldn't suggest to somebody to just watch the fight scene, because it does have a lot of storyline cut into it. But it is all women in this fight scene. If you wanted to see like the raid sort of Assault on Precinct 51 / women in prison kind of story, where it's super brutal and bloody with a basket case level animatronic looking villain in the back of someone's head, like, oh my god, can't even believe that sentence exists, but it does. The biggest thing about this scene is it explains why Gabriel looked different, how her face could have contorted to that extent to look like somebody different, to look, because we have seen Gabriel's face, he looks like a monster. And there's a good reason for that. When this scene unfolds, we get to see why Gabriel looks different and why Gabriel looks like a monster. And it is so gory. And like you said, played straight. Played in all of its like Hattenlotter Cronenbergian goodness. It's so insane, yet also so intense because the camera doesn't linger on it, and that is maybe like a throwback to older 80s movies where they've put all their money into this effect and this creature transformation or whatever. So it's gonna last 3 minutes and you're gonna see like every little bit of hair gel and KY jelly that they've smeared on it to make it look like grotesque and real and all of that, and all the fake blood and stuff. With this, they don't linger on it much longer because they've got a lot of other stuff to do within this 4-minute fight scene, which is, of course, like tearing people limb from limb. And it is almost like Fist of the North Star anime levels of insanity. Yeah. Blood geysers, limbs getting ripped, chunks of people just getting torn out of them because of the sheer strength of Gabriel, which is believable. And that's the other thing with this backwards person. Like, you try and make yourself a cup of coffee backwards. You try it.
I'm not going to. I don't have the dexterity, but I
really love all these girl fighters in this scene, though. It's just, it was fun. It was very fun, very bloody, very brutal. The punching straight through people again. It's like, what is it? Jackie O. Fist of the North Star, very anime level. Yeah.
It never gets old. And again, like, these are feats of strength that old Jason Voorhees can do, right? Punching through people, like grabbing people's heads, crushing them, like all of this stuff. She was doing like fucking Mortal Kombat fatalities on people. Like it really is a sight to behold. And I think that in this sequence, when people were talking about the genre shift and how buckwild the ending is, I got it. I really, really did get it. And what's the craziest thing of all is every police officer that had a name survived. So it's one of those things where it's the law of the inverse ninja, where 50 cops you can basically take out with one hit. But if you have one cop, it's going to be a prolonged fight where everyone vaguely knows martial arts and can like whip out shotguns and like all that kind of stuff. Very funny, very, very cool. It's fine. I didn't want any of those characters to die anyway, but it's just another thing that I noticed. I was like, man, no one they got really hurt, but no one died. Even the mousy crime scene investigator detective that hurries around clutching her books like an anime girl. She even makes it out of there. So that's good if you like those characters. This is going to lead to the final showdown because there's an aspect of me where I wonder what Gabriel was waiting for to kill his mother. The last person who did this, he had her captured before he killed anybody involved in the crime. Maybe it was just to go to that flair of theatrics and emo-ness that Gabriel definitely exhibits. Maybe it was the piece de resistance. It was the cherry on top of his murder cake. He wanted to save his biological mother, the person who put him in the facility in the first place. The last kill, because sure, the doctors performed everything on me, but I was only there because of her, ignoring the fact that she was 15 years old and scared and just wanted to have a normal life, and you were a weird inside out praying mantis looking motherfucker that that not even a mother could love. But this ends with Sydney and her fighting. Now, one thing that they had established several times, and I think where it's the most effective, was in the precinct scene where all those cops and criminals are getting killed, because they demonstrate that this entire time how is Madison not aware of all of this stuff? How, like, she wakes up in bed and the back of her head is bloody and she doesn't know anything. She isn't experiencing anything, or even when she's wide awake. And it's because she's in this psychic prison. Slowly over the years, because of her many miscarriages, Gabriel was using the energy of these babies to gain more powerful, and then put her in this, what do you want to call it, a psychic loop almost? Like, she thinks that she is in her bedroom asleep, or she thinks that she is sitting quietly in the precinct and no one's really paying her much mind, when in reality she is not doing any of that. She's like kung fu fighting a million guys and killing them all.
Or she's in Seattle underground, kidnapping her biological mother and duct taping her in her own attic, which is crazy. I really thought that Gabriel was going to try and manifest through one of these babies and was mad that she kept miscarrying. That's what I had really thought. But I mean, maybe we have to go all the way back and give Derek a little bit of credit, not for being like a wife abusing drunk, but like they should have got some therapy after the first miscarriage, because it was obviously taking its toll on him mentally. And maybe he was abusive and a drunk before all of that. This definitely exacerbated things, though. Like, really, honestly, she should have stopped having babies. Really, that would have helped with the whole Gabriel situation, even though they wouldn't have known it at the time. But I really thought, just like, maybe it's just some other horror movies or other horror books in me thinking that the spirit or whatever, the actual brain that's left of Gabriel, wanted to like manifest in one of her babies. That's really where I thought it was going to go. So I thought it was kind of cool that he was just like biding his time and feeding off of them. Really, really an interesting sort of angle to all of that, let alone the psychic prison thing, which is cool. I mean, and it also helps for the final scene and the resolution, because it allows her to turn that on its head. But I really like the way that they showed that, and it sort of reminded me of in a way of the Bly Manor ghosts, how they were on a loop, and they would wake and they would wait and they would walk and they would go to the lake and then start the whole process all over again. And it sort of reminded me of that final scene, which was so hard hitting for so many people in The Haunting of Bly Manor. This scene, I think, kind of lacks that in a way, probably because of all that we've been through with this movie up until this point. But it is hard-hitting nevertheless. And it reminded me of the video game Medium, where you're sort of playing in two different worlds like that. I thought, well, this would be a neat way to adapt the feeling of living in between two worlds. And it also explains to us how she would have been able to cope with all of this, because no doubt it would have happened from time to time through her life, how she was able to cope with this and not have any idea that she had this parasitic twin growing evilly in her backside.
Grows evilly. I guess you could say that there was a lot of jam left in that Gabriel donut.
Yes, you could say that. You could say that.
The sequence where she finally turns the table, when you think that the movie is going to end a certain way, where Gabriel is triumphant, kills Sydney, although flipping that bed on top, that hospital bed on top of her, probably should have killed her by itself. But those things are pretty heavy.
Yeah, they really are.
Despite all of that, Gabriel kills his biological mother, and then you find out that that is a psychic prison of Madison's making, and she kind of gives a variation of the Freddy Krueger speech, like, I'm not giving you any more power, and just slams the big gate shut. She also, by the way, realizes that she just has super strength now. Like, she if Gabriel could do these things, it means that she could do these things. And so it really is like horror superhero origin story. And they're not like this enters the even though I wouldn't call this movie horror, but the super dark, serious things like Unbreakable and all of the sequels that movie franchise has gotten at this point, and Brightburn, and now this, where it's you have a passable amount of films that occupy horror superhero, where they're incredibly violent, they're incredibly realistic, and most importantly, they're their own thing. So like maybe this not being Malignant Man is great. It's a plus, because one thing that I will give this to James Wan, like even if I didn't like the movie, which I did, I know I went after it a little bit on a few things, but I think it was fair criticism. I like this movie overall. Now that we've been talking about it, that's where I've landed. I like this movie. It's good. And it's fucking unique. It's original. Like I really dug the way that he messed around with genre. I really dug the level of gore. The story was good. Some of the dialogue is a little hackneyed. They over explain things in times. I think the sequence holding your sister, like, even though we're not blood related, you will always be my... I was like, was this even part of the... They never had a conversation where Sydney thought that she... Like, if I was Sydney, I would have looked at her like, I never thought I wasn't your real sister.
That would have been the comedy portion.
She's like, don't worry. Never ever doubt that you're my real sister in my mind. And she's like, thank you. I thought that already. Do you not think that I'm your real sister? Why did you say that? That would give me a complex.
Absolutely. I don't know who that character was there for. She did a great job doing the plot points that we need as far as the horror movie goes. But as far as like I'm infatuated with Detective Shaw and I'm your real sister kind of person, I don't know. Maybe it would sit at better in an anime or something like that sort of character. So it was just kind of weird. But I mean, it's the ending of like 13 Ghosts, where you got to have that I love you guys kind of scene to make everyone go, aw. Which I don't agree with. I don't think those scenes need to be there. There's two things about horror movies I don't agree with. You don't need the aw, let's have our hot cup of cocoa in the back of the ambulance and everything's okay. And I think that funeral scenes definitely belong in horror movies, because there's some people that think the funeral scene really puts too much of a pin in things and ends things, and it's a downer, too much of a downer. More funeral scenes, less heartfelt endings.
I think that demonstrating the business side of death is very interesting in horror. I also really like funeral scenes. I like resolution to death, acknowledgement of death. I think that real life, when we know someone who dies, particularly in a violent way, it's hard to tell an intimate story when something so dramatic happens. If there was like a massive double homicide where or like there was no way that you can wrap this all up at the beginning of the movie. Like, this would be news. This would be news making. Imagine if here in our city, a couple had to everyone's knowledge, a home invasion in which the man had his head twisted almost completely off, and people would be talking about it for months. And then when the year anniversary happened, they'd be talking about it then again too. And they'd be looking for killers and all that kind of stuff. And then multiple murders. Like, I understand that this is a big city, but this is like not something you can get back for. And then on top of the fact that like 100 people, and gang, I'm not exaggerating. Like, it's a lot of people got killed at that police break. Everyone.
Yeah.
Like, everybody.
Yeah.
And they showed a lot of discipline by ending it in that hospital room when they did. They just pull out, because I would just be like, you can't wrap this up. Like no one is going back to a normal life. You have, here's Madison's biological mother. Here's Sydney. Madison has this entity in her forever. It can't be removed, although it can be suppressed. Like, her adopted mother is somewhere. Like, so many people have gotten killed. Like, all those cops. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you would never hear the end of this. Like, I don't know, like, and what do the cops do? Like, the 3 cops that survived, oh yeah, don't worry, it was somebody else. Well, is that what they say? I don't know. But thankfully, we don't have to worry about it. because we just get an ending, although there's a little staticky buzz on that light bulb, question mark, the end, Finn, question mark, we don't know.
So Malignant 2 will be coming to a theater near you. I'd have to say that it will have to be a story, if it's ever written at all, that she needs to call on Gabriel's power, even though she seems to embody most of the good parts now. So who knows? I like the way that it ends. You're right, because what are they going to do? Show the cleanup crews in the city streets?
Yeah.
Show someone picking through like a forensics team from another precinct in that cop shop? No, it's not going to happen. There's no other way to really end this except just to simply end it like it does. Gabriel's under lock and key, psychic lock and key. That's all we need to know. I thought it was a really, really, really good time. I'm glad that you enjoyed it too. And as we were talking, I could see that both of us were getting excited. I had to watch that prison fight scene again just because it is so brutal and so cool. And you're right, I don't know why people don't talk about that more. I really hope that your wish comes true, or your dream comes true, where people are talking more about this in 10 years, 20 years down the road, because it's sort of like, you know, you want to talk about a horror movie? We just talked about every kind of horror movie pretty much you could think of, and crammed into one thing. You can't decide what to watch? Just watch Malignant. Might as well.
Yeah. I definitely would like to sit down and watch this movie again to really sort of soak it in a little bit more, and pick out things that maybe I missed and watch that action sequence again. But I'd be really happy to do that. And I think that I give a lot of credit to people who come to the table with something so original. And it kind of goes back to that old saying, is there's no such thing as a sure thing in Hollywood, so try the interesting thing. And James Wan just tried to do something interesting. And we have this sequence where, like, a woman with her parasitic twin out of the back of her head fucking kung fu fighting a bunch of police officers, while we look at her face, essentially a death mask, while someone is contorting and fighting. And it's just so weird. And, you know, it almost, like, it seems like Gabriel could be a Batman villain, or like something from Hellboy or something like that. Like there's just, like, you know, I don't mean to keep making the joke, but there's jam left in this donut. Like, you could do more with this, I feel like. I agree. And that idea of maybe we need Gabriel now, like, I knew you would need me, sister. And like he like fucking takes over and like gets her out of jams, just keeping the jam theme going.
Just keep the jam analogy going. Yeah, he is the peanut butter to her jam.
He's like, I get you out of jam, sis. I dig it. I really dig it. But what do we got next for him, Liz?
Coming up next, we are going to switch speeds into werewolf country. We have a duo of films that we should have already done. And I think this will be the era of Dead Air doing films they should have already done, or thought we already did. Because I swore that we had done The Howling, but we haven't done The Howling. We've got Dog Soldiers and The Howling. So we've got some really good action horror coming up, actually, and a classic of the genre with some of the better looking werewolves ever. Wonderful effects too in both, really, but even more wonderful in The Howling, if you ask me. And then we're going to go back into Asian horror territory. And before I leave the idea of Asian horror, this film somewhat reminded me of someone trying to do a whole bunch, and one of those ideas that we were talking about earlier, where people get interested in something super quick because they see it all over Twitter, and then the next week there's something else. So their interest in it just plummets. And I saw a book. This is Lydia's Book Nook. Welcome to the Book Nook.
I like it.
Cassandra Kaw's book, Nothing But Blackened Teeth, was all over Book Talk and YouTube and everywhere. Everyone was talking about this book last year, around the same time that this film came out, and it just kind of peaked and disappeared. And it tries to do a whole lot of things. There's every single trope of horror book and every single catchphrase and buzzword of that people have tossed around in the last 10 years in horror seems to make its way into this novella. It's not even a very long book. It took me like an hour and a half to read it. It's very, very short, but it reminded me so much of that. But it's got such a good premise, and it you like what we've watched as far as Asian horror film and are excited about some of the stuff to come, and you want some sort of story, and I'm recommending this to you as well, Wes, because it's a really short read. Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw may not be the best written book, but it is sort of like a 13 Ghosts of Asian horror told in a really modern way, and a really, really good, based in real life ideas of some of the funeral rites, some of the superstitions about burying people alive that used to exist in Japan, and the beauty practice of blackening teeth. And it's just such an interesting little story, maybe not executed 100% perfectly, but it sort of rapid cycles through a few horror genres, and also has that tongue-in-cheek meta sort of Scream vibe to it here and there, and somehow it packs it all into a little tiny novella, very short little book. So it reminded me quite a bit of this. It's just like, it's something that everyone got really interested in, people loved it, a lot of people hated it, and then it just disappeared entirely. I really hope that maybe we can watch this again for our 404th episode of Dead Air.
I think that the best thing about this show and other shows like us is it allows us to really sink our teeth into these films and give them their due. I think also what I liked about this film, going back to what you were saying, and even in regards to your book, which I definitely do want to check out, because I've actually been looking to get into reading more fiction lately. As you know, I'm like a non-fiction buff. That's usually where I like to read my stories, and just like history, and especially about film and shit like that, which I feel is helpful for the show. But this attention span, and I'm a victim of it too. My attention span seems to have been eroded very seriously over the last like 10 years of my life, and sometimes it makes me think that my opinion on like, let's not really do too many modern things, where it doesn't really make sense anymore because of like what we're talking about, because of the fact that people get really excited about something and then 5 fucking minutes later they don't even remember it happened. And even with me, I could have sworn this movie came out way more recently than it did. And now here we are almost in the middle of 2023, and this movie came out in 2021. And I was convinced that this was less than a year old.
Yeah, same here. And part of it is probably because we're really behind the times, just being Canadian, because we're not privy to all these really wonderful releases sometimes when they happen. Everything's sort of delayed, and we're waiting for things to hit Netflix or Shudder. But, and a part of that is just how quickly this cycle, and it's not even like we blame the 24-hour news cycle, but that sort of has set a precedent for the way that we treat all sorts of media and music. Things like not realizing that last Whitechapel album was like almost 3 years ago as well. Not that there's a whole bunch of Whitechapel fans out there, but I went through this recently where I was like, I swore that just came out. And because I had it on my list, right? I had it on my list. Same with watching this film. But I'm glad that we can sort of grab onto some of these before they flitter off into the sunset and people forget about them only a few years after they've been released. I'm glad that we can grab them with our skyhook and pull them back down and talk about them for a couple hours.
Yeah, it makes me think that, like, I always get so suspect when people say that the thing they just watched is their favorite thing ever because of how quickly everything moves. And I just, people, like, not to sound like the old man on the mountain, but I really feel like nowadays modern audiences really get gypped in not being able to sit and wallow in a film the way that we were able to back in the day, where something was in, like, if you're not going to the movie theater within a month, you're missing it. And then oh, it's coming out on digital, but there's 500 other things that have come out on digital, and so when you watch that, okay, now it's on to the next thing and the next thing. And like we were saying, And I just feel like, back in the day, things were in the theater for fucking ever. And then you could just rent it forever. And so you could and then you would buy the VHS or the DVD or whatever. And the cost was as such that most people's movie collections were fairly small. So you had 20 movies. And so you would end up just watching these things. And so much less was coming out. It was so much easier to keep up with everything. And just nowadays, there's just so much at such a huge velocity. And I just can't help but think that everyone was this was such a hot topic of conversation for 5 minutes. And then that's it. It's crazy. But I'm glad we were finally, so I thank you for bringing it to us.
Yeah, no problem. I think we're lucky in that we don't watch a lot of these series that people watch and talk about on Netflix or the streamers, other streamers all the time. So our time isn't taken up like that. And I think that's also part of it, is that people just don't make the time to watch and appreciate things properly. Maybe people watch the highlight reels or the end of such and such explained and pass that off as having watched the film, because they're spending 20 hours watching the greatest and latest limited series on whatever streamer, so they can afford to have 10 minutes of water cooler conversation for the 10 minutes that thing is popular, and then on to the next thing. It's kind of disturbing to follow that cycle, and I'm glad that we don't chase it. And I'm glad our listeners don't chase that cycle and can take the time to sit back, especially with some older films. Dog Soldiers is underappreciated by so many people, and then on the other hand, super appreciated by its cult following. So I'm so happy that we're going to spend some time talking about that and The Howling, a movie that no one stopped talking about since the day it was released. So
yeah, I'm ready to keep that trend going. Anyways, I'm Wes Knipe.
And I'm Typical Lydia.
And you've been listening to a jam-filled episode of Dead Air.
Has a lot of jam in his donut, or I don't know what saying people say to say that he's still got lots of road to go. He could blow it out of the park now that he's returned. Pardon?
So much jam in his donut.
Well, yeah, I think it's a viable saying. Maybe it's the Tim Hortons Canadian in me coming out to play.
It is. I think.
Okay, I ruined the show. Right out of the gate. Ruined the show.
You made it better. Donut Gate is going to go down in history. If you like this show, you can find more episodes and other content on splatterpictures.net, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you download your podcasts. You can also find us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. The show is edited by Lydia Peaver and hosted by Lydia Peaver and me, Wes Knipe. We'll see you next time.